Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is directed by Wes Ball and stars Owen Teague, Freya Allen, Kevin Durant, and among others. In this story, it takes place 300 years after the events of the previous trilogy that was set up in Rise, Dawn, and War. And in this story, it follows a chimpanzee named Noah who just likes to explore and is maybe not and is naive and is trying to work things out with his established clan as the generations have passed. And it pretty much shows that the apes have been taking place in these different clans that they have set up. And along the way, it gets into some trouble as rival apes that are led by Proximus Caesar's group end up pretty much trying to go after this human girl that's on the run, and it becomes a journey where Noah has to team up with the girl in order to find out more, and as he uncovers the history behind Caesar's legacy. Now, here's a little backstory. Now, this movie was directed by Wes Ball, who I'm not really too familiar with. I've heard that he's directed the Maze Runner trilogy, which I haven't seen, but I hear, because at the time when those movies came out, I just kind of thought of them as kind of a Hunger Games kind of knockoff movies, but from what I heard, they're actually really good or decent. So I haven't seen them, but maybe one of these days I may check them out. But going into this one, I got really interested, but at the same time kind of really more open-minded, because I've always been a big fan of the Planet of the Apes franchise, especially from the original film and some of its sequels. And when the reboot trilogy came out from 2011, starting with Rise and then Dawn and War, it was the much-deserved reboot series that we definitely needed after the not-so-good Tim Burton remake that came out in 2001. And so my fascination with the trilogy, with how it was able to make things more grounded and be able to take the idea of having the apes pretty much roam the world and everything, and the world pretty much go into complete chaos, and basically living in different living side by side, or not living side by side, but like having to coexist with the other apes and everything. It was able to really accomplish everything that really not only pushed the stakes high, but it felt very emotional, and I really enjoyed and loved the way Caesar's arc went through with all three films, with him, trying to be as peaceful as he can, but there's things that really get in the way with the humans not really wanting to coexist with the apes and everything, and things get really worse as it comes around. And so after War, I didn't really know where the direction was going to go after this, because since that movie was so great and really ended the series where it should have been, I was open-minded, but at the same time I was just kind of skeptical, like, I'm not really sure how this is going to turn out, especially how great those other three were. And also knowing that Matt Reeves, who directed the last two films, is no longer involved with the series, it made me curious what they were going to do next. And so after getting to more hearing about it and more of the trailers, I got myself really interested, but I was still going in with little skepticism, because I didn't really know where it was going to go in this direction. But upon seeing it, I can say that I do enjoy the movie, but it's definitely a little step down compared to the other three films, and because it seems like the movie does kind of have itself, going back and not really achieving certain stuff, especially with what Rise did, because it seems like they were more focused on trying to make a new trilogy of this with this one, in which they may potentially do, instead of really doing like more of a standalone type of story. And so that's one of the things that kind of held me back for it, but I'll get into that later. But to get my pros out of the way, I thought the cast in this were all fantastic. Owen Teague, who plays Noah, I thought was really great. He's not really Caesar in that he was a departure from Caesar in that he's more naive and is a lot more, he just likes to explore and wants to, be there with his friends and family and everything. And he's definitely one that you can definitely see like the opposite of Caesar, in that he loves to basically learn more about stuff, while at the same time he'll actually get himself involved into risks that he puts himself into. And I really enjoyed his character and throughout the movie, and a lot of the stuff that he goes through in this is not only very emotional, especially the stuff where he's trying to get back his family and everything, but it's really captivating with the way that he pushes the limit and goes through the extremes with trying to get everything done. And then the other biggest standout for me the most was actually the actor who played Raka, the orangutan. I thought he was funny at times, and he's definitely one of the more, I guess you could say, like elder type of apes that's been around, that actually remembers Caesar's teachings, because, and as we learned throughout the movie, and I'm just going to keep it very vague, but the apes that are pretty much led by Proximus Caesar, they're taking the legacy of what Caesar did in the wrong way, and trying to turn it into the bad. And while Rocca pretty much believes in the actual good that Caesar left behind and everything. And so I thought he was great, and he had some funny parts. I enjoyed the way it played out too, this character and stuff. And then the other one I do enjoy is actually Freya Allen, who plays the human girl. I'm not going to go much into detail because she has a big story later on that I can't reveal. But I thought her performance was good, but I do have a little bit of a con with her character that I'll get into a little later with. But I thought she was great, and she definitely, is throughout the course of the movies that we've seen how the humans are pretty much interacting with the apes and stuff, and it really worked with James Franco and Rise, Jason Clarke and Dawn. And while War didn't really have much of a human character, we did have the little girl that was in that one that was their accomplice and stuff. And so imagine that being basically a grown-up version with this one, but years later. And she's very resourceful. She's I can't really describe much of her character because it's really more about she's getting her own plan to go after the territory that Proxima Caesar's in. So I'll leave it there. But I still thought she was a good addition, but there's still something about her that I'll have to get into that really kind of cuts it back on, that really makes the writing feel very like a little lackluster when it comes to her character. But I'll get into that later. Now, and the other biggest standout, surprisingly enough, is Kevin Durand as Proxima Caesar. I thought he was not only intimidating when he needed to be, but he's a departure from the other villains we've seen, especially from Koba, because this one is a lot more I don't want to say campy, but he's a lot more energetic, and he's just full of life, that he wants to see a good kingdom rise with everything, with all the apes in this territory that he's at, and he wants to use Caesar's teachings in a way that's, while the very complete opposite and as a tyrant, but the way that he comes across with his performance, I thought was not only really interesting to watch, but he just really seemed like he had a lot of fun playing the role, and I really appreciate that he was a lot more. How do I describe it? He's a lot more like that kind of fun villain that you like to see, that pushes the limit, and he can actually be brutal at times, but it still shows that a lot of the things that he believes in his eyes of what works, and so if that makes sense. And then what could I say about the visuals? We've come a long ways from the visuals that we've seen from the original film, which I to this day still enjoy the makeup effects and stuff, and then go into the rest of the series that involve with even for Tim Burton's remake that use very great prosthetic makeup, but for using Rise that use all CGI. It's pretty amazing how they went through each movie and they keep getting better and better with the effects. I was seeing the effects in this just from the trailers. I didn't really get much of it, seeing it. But after seeing it on the big screen, it really showcased a lot of the stuff that we've seen, where using these kind of photorealistic type of stuff where the actors are actually doing the motion capture and everything, I thought was really not only well done as it was with the other three, but also it's almost like Avatar 2 Avatar levels of being able to showcase a lot of the rendering of how you do CGI the right way. And this is no exception. This definitely shows that they really did their homework, and not only making the apes very emotional in their faces and stuff, but also just it's everything that I really loved from the other three films as well. And it's here too, especially with the falcons and the other apes that we come across. And then the actual production design too, especially when we see the landscape of the forest areas and a lot of the original landmarks that they show in certain areas, whether it's a telescope or some other things they see, it really shows a lot of the great scale that this movie could have had. And I really kind of wish I would have watched it IMAX now, because it really has that really epic scope that I really enjoy, with seeing all the ruins and the ruins of the earth and everything. I thought in the decayed in the forest and stuff. And so there's that, and then the score was also great, and then got to really hand it to some of the ways that the movie gets into some uncharted territory, where we get into some stuff later on in the film that I thought not only worked in its own right, but it also felt like it was a sort of a callback to one of the earlier, the original series as well in certain regards. And I'll leave it there because it's a really big spoiler, but it made me really wondering if that's the direction they're going to go in the future, because there's a theory I kind of have after rewatching Rise that something's going to lead up to something major in the future, and especially with that ending. And so Now, there's more I can get into detail, but it all really comes involved with more spoilers. But if I had to get into some of my cons, as much as I was really getting into Proxima Caesar as the villain, I do feel like he is very underused because he doesn't come in until probably about an hour into the movie or so. And when he is on screen, he's great, but it does feel like he's very underutilized where we don't really get to see a lot of what he's really capable of doing. And even though the actor is doing a phenomenal job, and there's a lot to him, especially toward the end, that really comes into play, I just feel like there's more stakes they really could have pushed that really shows more of what he could do, because most of it, it's all his minions and stuff and doing all the work for him and everything, and it just really feels like there's more that we could have really established with. And then on top of that, the pacing did feel a little slow, and not really too slow, but like a little draggy in some parts. I was really invested with the story, but there are points where it did feel like it kind of dragged a little bit because the movie does run a little close to 2.5 hours, and I think some trimming a little here and there could have really helped. And on top of that, there is some stuff that I was saying earlier with the human girl that I would, go into more detail, but it's trying to avoid spoilers. But I found myself like really interested, like at first where it was going with her. But as the movie goes along, it does seem like things are getting very kind of like convenient, and there's this whole kind of thing that's going on between her trusting Noah and things like that. And while it does have its good payoff toward the end of it that I enjoyed, I still feel like there's scenes that they could have either went on more with to try to establish more of the relationship with her and him. I also felt like the stuff that was involved with her and the humans, I was not really like my main kind of like focus. I think it really took the focus away out of doing what Noah's journey was. And I think that if you still could have kept her, but you wanted to try to make it balanced to where the humans are still as much interesting as they are with the actual apes, like they were in the other films. And so that's just one of my other cons I have with her. And she does a great job. The actress that plays her does a great job. And I heard she's also really great in The Witcher. But I haven't seen that show. But, well, on top of that, there's some other stuff that they actually introduced that they introduced another character that's in the film that I felt like wasn't really as focused, and they didn't really do much with this character. And it kind of plays into it toward later on in the film. And I won't reveal who the character is, but it almost feels like it was an afterthought. And while the idea is really interesting of what they do with the character that involves with the apes, it feels like there's something that really should have been elaborated more with, or do something that could have really played itself better with the actual purpose of the character itself. It's also one of those things too with the ending that I can't reveal, but it does make it seem like they were really desperate to try to set up something bigger in the future. And it feels like if the movie could have just stayed where it's at, as more of a standalone, it would have really made itself more upped, and really they could have really either extended the scene longer at the end, or they could have like made it to where it's a little bit more ambiguous, if that makes sense. I don't know, it's just one of those things where it seems like the ending kind of feels a little tacked on, where it was trying to really set itself up and stuff. And I'm all for it. I definitely want to see more of these in the future, but you can definitely tell that it was trying to pretty much pull what they did with, it just goes to show that it kind of comes very abruptly toward the end of it. It sets something up interesting, but it's also one that it kind of really feels like it should have went longer. Overall, though, I still did enjoy the movie despite some issues that it may have had, and it doesn't come close to the original trilogy, but it's still up there as a good start to this new kind of soft reboot that they're trying to go with. And so with that, I'm going to give the movie a compelling grade on the Film Freaks meter. So, for those of you who have also seen Kingdom for the Planet of the Apes, let me know in the comments of what you have thought about it, and also the other films. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.